Hey there, friends. It's Mr. Matt here with your Sunday school lesson. Now, it's a new month, which means we have a new topic for what we're going to talk about in Sunday school this month. We're going to be talking about the parable of the lost sheep. Now, you might remember, if you were with us in Sunday school last year, we started to talk about parables. And we started to talk about what a parable was and how we use it. So, those of you that were with us might remember that a parable is the name of a special type of story. And in this story, it's a story that teaches us some lesson. And Jesus used a whole lot of parables as he was teaching people. And the way the parable usually works is it would take something that the people who were hearing the story would know a lot about and would be very familiar with. And then it uses that thing, whatever it is, to teach us something about God. So if Jesus were teaching us today, he might do a parable about a car, or a parable about a cell phone, or a parable about, I don't know, could be anything. Bicycles, books, soccer players, lacrosse sticks. Who knows what Jesus would do if he were teaching today? But in the time of the Bible, they didn't have some of those things. But there were things that people did know about. And taking care of sheep was one of those things. Because in just about any village or town, there was someone who would keep a flock of sheep or goats or some other livestock. So the story that Jesus tells goes something like this. And he's asking a question, and he says, which of you, meaning the people that are listening, which of you, if you had a flock of 100 sheep and you found out that one was missing, which of you would not leave the flock of 99 sheep and go out in search for the one that was lost? And when you found it, would carry it back to the flock and celebrate, excuse me, and tell all of your friends that the one sheep that you had lost was found and has been returned safely to the flock. This is the way it is with God's kingdom. Now, that story, because we don't know a whole lot about sheep and shepherds, because we don't encounter them as much, might not mean quite the same thing to us. So let me share just a couple of things and sort of add to that story a little bit so that you might be able to understand it a little bit better. Now, sheep are animals that generally do better in a group. They aren't necessarily the brightest animals that are around, and by being in a group, they can survive a little bit better. And so shepherds, the people that watch over the sheep, tend to try to keep them in the group. But the sheep need someone to help tell them when it's time to move closer to the water so they can get a drink, or to move to another field to get more to eat. And so the shepherd gets to know the sheep and is always counting, because the sheep, in moving from place to place, it's not unusual for one of those sheep to kind of wander off and to move in a different direction from everybody else. And so the shepherd, or in some cases sheepdogs, will help to keep the animals, the sheep, all together and moving safely where they need to go next. So everybody that Jesus was telling that story to would kind of understand that about sheep. The interesting part about this story is it tells us how important the sheep was to the shepherd, because this one sheep has apparently wandered off and is lost. And the shepherd leaves the group of sheep and knows that they're going to be okay because they're together. And he goes off to search for the sheep that has gone missing. Now, we don't know why the sheep left. We don't know exactly where the sheep was. We can use our imaginations and guess about that. But what we know is that the one sheep was lost. But the shepherd took the time to go out and to search to find this sheep. And the story tells us that when he finds the sheep, he is so very happy. He lifts up the sheep, he carries it on his shoulders, he brings the sheep back to the others, and he's so happy about it that when he gets back to the village, he tells everyone, oh, it was terrible. One of the sheep was lost, but you know what? I went out and I was able to find that sheep and bring it back, and it's not lost anymore, and the whole flock is back together again. Now, if a parable is telling us a story to teach us about God, what is it that the parable of the lost sheep might be telling us about God? Well, there are lots of lessons that we can learn, and we'll talk about many of them. But I think for today, the big point of this parable is this. In the story, the shepherd is a representative, is like God. And the sheep are like us, God's people. And this parable is telling us that God has all of his people. And he wants to be friends and in relationship with all of his people. And God will do just about anything to go out and to find his sheep, to find his people that have become lost, that have drifted away from God. God wants to bring all of his people in close. And he knows all of his people, and he wants to keep his people safe. And when one of his sheep wanders off and is brought back, God celebrates. So the lesson for today about the parable is to remember when you hear it that it's teaching us about God as the shepherd and about us as God's sheep. And we'll talk more about this parable in the weeks ahead. But that's probably enough for today, introducing this parable so you get to hear it for the first time. Now, in the activity video that's coming up, you'll have a chance to explore this parable a little bit more so that hopefully you'll be able to share it with somebody else. All right, that's all for this Sunday school lesson. I'll see you next time. Bye.